I didn't see you there. Welcome to my reading corner. We interrupt this video to bring you a public service announcement. The Doctor's Library has decided to read until the end of Part 1. This was decided because of page differences of different reading medias. We apologize for any inconvenience. Back to your regularly scheduled YouTube video. So it is August 25th, Saturday, and we are reading The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, one of my favorites. I'm super excited about this. What I found interesting about this book was that it talks about the everyday German. And these are, Germans from the poorer side of Munich. So they're not rich, but it's from their everyday lives. And it goes a lot into detail about how they see politics. It's actually very interestingly written. It's from an interesting perspective. I think that this is from the perspective of death. It's not from the Grim Reaper, because the narrator makes a comment about that, how he finds the thought of the Grim Reaper to be very interesting and quite amusing. So that tells me that he's not the Grim Reaper, but he deals with death. So I think that the narrator is death itself, but it's written from his perspective, telling the story of the book thief. This book starts out in 1939 in Germany, post World War II. The main character, Liesl, is on her way to Munich with her mother and her brother. Her mother, not being able to properly take care of Liesl and her brother, is giving them away to a foster home. Unfortunately, her brother dies on the way to Munich, on the train. And this is where Liesl steals her first book. When they go to bury her brother, a book falls out of the jacket of one of the gravediggers. It's called The Gravedigger's Handbook. And her brother's death ends up being very hard for her, which is understandable. I don't know what I would do in a similar situation. So she now has to go to Munich alone without her brother. So she has essentially lost her whole family in one day, which is heartbreaking if you think about it. So she's introduced to her foster parents, Hans and Rosa Huberman. Hans ends up being Liesl's favorite person, the person that she can go to. Liesl ends up having nightmares once she's there in her foster home, and Hans is the one that takes care of her during that. And they end up having reading lessons eventually, once Hans discovers this gravedigger's handbook hidden under her mattress. And then Hans actually ends up teaching Liesl how to read. It's not her teachers, it's Hans. Soon after Liesl arrives in Munich with her foster family, she meets this boy named Rudy Steiner. And he's an interesting character, this Rudy Steiner. He's interesting. He's famous. He's famously known for the Jesse Owens incident, which everyone knows about, but nobody really talks about. So the Olympics in 1936, when Jesse Owens won some gold medals, and I think he broke some records, Rudy ended up taking charcoal from the stove, covering himself in black charcoal, stealing his brother's bike, and going down to the track by where they live, and ran as if he were Jesse Owens. So cute. His father found him running, covered in black charcoal, and was not too happy. This is where we learn some things about his father, Alex, and about how he's a part of the Nazi Party. But he doesn't hate Jews. He doesn't hate anybody. And then you kind of get the feeling that he joined the Nazi Party out of necessity. You know, to keep him and his family safe, he had to join the Nazi Party. Which was interesting to me at the time that I read this, the first time. Is that it's something I never thought of before. That people did it out of necessity. It wasn't something that you wanted to do, but something that you had to do to stay alive, to survive in that time. So when Rudy covered himself in black charcoal and ran around pretending that he was Jesse Owens, this wasn't he wants to be like this famous athlete and win lots of gold medals. This was he wants to be like this black person. And at the time, that was a no-no. That wasn't, you don't do that. And Alex becomes very afraid that because Rudy did this, Rudy is going to be taken away from him and his family. And he basically tells his son that he shouldn't want to be anything but German, you know, and fully embrace his, what he says, beautiful blonde hair and big, safe blue eyes. That these traits, these German traits, will keep him safe. If nothing else, his German traits will keep him safe. And the want to be anything else is dangerous. And I found that very, very interesting, because I'd never really thought of it that way. Rudy and Liesl met out on the streets playing soccer. Since Liesl was the new girl on the block, she had to play goalie. Nobody had ever blocked a penalty kick from Rudy. So Liesl shows up and she's like, no, let me take care of goalie. I got this. And then Rudy comes up, shoots a penalty goal, and she deflects it. And he ends up throwing a muddy snowball in her face. But they end up becoming really good friends. And since this is post-World War II Germany, there's a lot of references to concentration camps. They don't come out and blatantly outright say it, but they imply that they're there. Like when they're walking to school, they go down what they call the Road of Yellow Stars. This was the Jewish side of the neighborhood. So this section is more or less abandoned. There's a lot of yellow stars on the buildings, hence the name. The buildings have been broken glass and Jewish slurs written all over them, and is pretty abandoned. They more or less just mention this. They don't talk about it, but they just talk about it as a place that nobody necessarily wanted to be or look at, but everyone did. Which is interesting. Liesl and her papa, Hans, have been doing these reading sessions where Hans has been trying to teach Liesl how to read. Eventually in school, they get a reading examination where they have to stand in front of the class and read a section of whatever book their teacher puts in front of them. So Liesl's feeling fairly confident in her reading ability. But her teacher skips over her in the line. And her classmates notice this. In particular, Rudy noticed this and points this out. And when the teacher says, well, Liesl can't do it, Liesl says, yes, I can, and proceeds to march up to the front of the class and tries to read a section from the book that the teacher has handed her. Unfortunately, she gets very, very nervous, and she gets flustered, and she realizes that this reading thing is harder than she thought. She reads sections of the Gravedigger's Handbook from memory, and the teacher knows that this is crap. She is, you know, punished for doing that, and she's then made fun of for being stupid. But she shows them all when she beats the living crap out of her bulliers, and nobody messes with her. Girl power. Alright.
I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about the first part of The Book Thief. I'm really looking forward to listening to those. So I hope you guys had a great week, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you guys later.